Hey, what's up, podcast? It's Jeff. Just want to jump in here. This is a special bonus episode of Teach Better Talk. This is actually going to be the audio recording from a Facebook Live that our team is doing every single day, Monday through Friday, at 8 a.m. Eastern Time in our Facebook private group. You can get in that group at teachbettergroup.com or go on to Facebook and just search Teach Better Team. You'll see our page and then you'll see the group. Get in there. So here we go, a special bonus episode of Teach Better Talk pulled from one of our Facebook Live videos in our private group at teachbettergroup.com. Hope you enjoy.
Happy Monday. I have an amazing guest with us that may look very familiar. Joe, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing awesome. I've got my cup of coffee here and ready to go and enjoy this chat.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk shop with you and just hang out because I kind of feel like I'm like live with family right now. We interact quite a bit on social media, so I was really honored that you were willing to brave the morning with me for our daily drop-in. You know, everybody who joins these videos not only are able to post questions if you're in our private Facebook group, but really participate in this discussion. You have continued most mornings to participate in these. And then for everyone else who isn't yet in our private group, they can catch these recordings after the fact as a bonus episode for Teach Better Talk podcast and over on YouTube. So it's just been really fun to engage with people every morning with this. And I can already see there are comments this morning coming into our stream. Very excited to see your wonderful face in our daily drop-in. So if somebody's listening right now, maybe not affiliated with our private group yet, they haven't taken the plunge to join our wacky, fun little group that we have, and maybe they're unfamiliar with everything you do, Joe, would you give us like a little bit of a background? What's your background in education? What do you do? Kind of get our morning started with hearing a little bit more about you.
My name is Joe Gonzalez, and I'm currently a sixth grade teacher at Andrew Jackson Middle School, and that is in Kanawha County Schools in Charleston, West Virginia. I'm a journeyman teacher. This is my 7th year. I've taught elementary. I taught 5th grade for 6 years previous to that. But this year I decided that middle school was a new challenge I wanted to do. And I've loved it. I wish it would have, I'm not saying anything yet, but I would have liked to have completed a full year, but who knows. But anyway, for me, it was an awesome transition. I did enjoy my time in elementary, but I also looked at maybe moving to the new challenge was fun. I've had many other jobs and careers before this that finally I landed in teaching. So I'm happy to be here. So.
Well, we're going to have to talk more about that. I want to hear kind of about your background, and like middle school is my background as well. So I love when we get good middle school people on here because I'm always eager to talk shop, but I think that there's a whole lot of things we're going to be able to dive into. I do want to note, I'm looking at my phone because Kelly posted a comment saying, "Happy Monday, Ray and Joe. Good morning." I feel like that could be our morning show name, like the morning show with Ray and Joe. We could do this. That's like kind of catchy. Don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a morning person, so yes, absolutely.
See, you're going to regret saying that because now I'm going to text you every morning being like, daily drop-in, you come in? It'll be great. I do see a ton of people posing good morning comments. It's always so good to have people participate in this group. Don't forget, while Joe and I are going to actually dive into a lot of different things, Joe, I have a lot of questions about kind of your experience so far with remote learning and the work you've done. We're also here to take questions. So if anybody in here wants to post questions about either their own classroom or their own requirements for remote learning, Joe and I are happy to be your brainstorming buddies. So feel free to use us during this conversation. In addition to also commenting to each other, and I love all the interaction we're getting so far with everyone this morning. So, Joe, tell me a little bit. I know you kind of obviously, I think we're all in this position where we wish we could finish out our year. But how did all this remote learning come about for you? It seems like everybody has their own story on, how this transition happened for them and how quickly they got into this distance learning environment. Will you give us a little background with that?
Absolutely. Our district was actually on spring break that week leading up to March 13th, Friday the 13th, when basically all schools in most parts of the country got shut down. All week I had kind of been thinking in the back of my mind, hearing cases were popping up and everything. So it was ramping up more and more, and nothing had been coming out of our district. So I was kind of like scratching my head going, well, this, something's got to change, or something's got to happen. And then obviously, our governor went on Friday the 13th. So what happened is everyone went into kind of, I don't want to call it not a panic, but a crisis. And, okay, what do we need to do? And our team, our schools and our administrators went into action. And that following week gave us teachers about 3 or 4 days to get together, to plan, to figure out what we're going to do, come up with I wouldn't say I can't remember what grade level, but most of us are one-to-one iPad from probably 3rd or 4th grade on all the way through high school. So we had to work into some of the issues of getting, kids might have left an iPad at school over the break, and then how to get that back. And then obviously then going through the safety of it, you don't want kids coming into school. And so I was able to go into school, I think, that Tuesday and meet with our team and kind of just get a general plan. And we had Thursday and Friday to post some lessons and get the ball rolling from there. And ever since then, the following 2 weeks after that was the biggest kind of just question mark, and kind of, we had plans, we've been putting lessons up, and I think expectations were either too high, too low, couldn't find it in the middle. We couldn't figure out what to expect from the students. We didn't know how long this was going to last. Was this, I was thinking a couple of lessons of like, well, okay, is this something that, can I just pick up content that we were doing a couple weeks ago? And that, will stem into our next conversation eventually. But, then it just, we started realizing the technology started shutting down a little bit and was the big challenge. So that started putting, damper in. And I appreciated the flood of all the tech companies offering, free services and things like that. And it helped us, but it also at the same time, a lot of things that I was using got shut down. So the kids kept emailing me being like, hey, this doesn't work. So it was definitely a challenge. So that brought us to about last weekend, and we had a meeting with our principal and the superintendent of the schools for the state of West Virginia. Said starting today will be a new learning platform for the distance learning.
Okay. So how did that affect you with that shift?
I think initially at first it was, I would say, probably a little bit of pushback of saying, well, the model is starting today as up until 8:30 and my lessons are already posted. We are only to do one lesson for whatever subject we teach, and then give them an entire week to complete it. It is due on Sunday at 11:59. And you put your whatever content you have, the assignment, and then an enrichment activity that they're not required to do, but that's kind of the three-headed attack that they're doing with it. And at first I thought, what are they doing this for and why? And then I think they looked at it from a standpoint of a parent. And I think you've had Becky Thau on here before talking about, you've got a middle schooler, a little kid, how are you trying to handle teaching these kids? And then you've got to teach your own kids on your classroom. So parents were juggling. You teach math, so I'm sure not every parent remembers 6th grade math, 7th, 8th grade math. And so I have a 4 and 5-year-old, and trying to teach my 4 and 5-year-old are difficult enough. And then in the process, trying to help my kids out of my classroom. But the other big push was, and I'll put a plug in for Caitlin Giordano, if I'm saying her name correctly. She just released The Fall of Grades, a little blog. I read it last night and read it again this morning. It was awesome. I recommend you go check it out. Talking about feedback, and that is what our superintendent was basically saying is feedback. Provide feedback to the students. This is stuff that should not be graded. So it really forced me to go back and look at what is the most important content. What is most important right now? So that's what
Joe, I loved that very like variety of in your story. I want to go and like pick apart every single section. So don't be upset with me. I just think you had so many important things that I think we can dive more into. One being that Caitlin Giordano is literally in my mind the queen of grading because she hates it. And I really pride myself on being pretty progressive with this idea of grading. I'm very feedback focused. I really like truly, I don't mean to like pat myself on the back, but I thought I was pretty progressive. I'm like, I don't, all these things. And then I met Caitlin Giordano and she challenges me all of the time in trying to see grades even more drastically different than how I thought that I was already viewing them. So I actually would love to hear more about that blog eventually. But let's go all the way back. So all the way back, it's March 13th, the Friday the 13th, students are out of school. You had a few meetings with your teachers, and then you started remote learning. I remember this day for you because you were participating in our daily drop-in in the comments, and you were posting about how this was your first day. And so your mindset during that period of time, from my understanding, was that you were posting information by week. Is that how you started?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had that Thursday and Friday as our first quote week just to kind of ease them into it. And then the following week was more, we were anticipating to put 2 to 3 assignments in per week, again, because that was all we were operating on how long are we going to be out? We didn't know whether it was a week, 2 weeks, so that's the premise that we were operating under.
Nice. And so when I think posting by week was the first very common thing teachers were doing in a hopes to be very transparent with students, try and address somewhat of the issue of equity. If you were giving students, assignments by week, then they kind of had a really large gap of time that they could be looking into this information. And hopefully, you were considering the parents that at least they could have a week's view versus scrambling every single day. And I see a lot of parents that appreciated that, but there was also some parents that were like, this is still too much, because there were teachers that were giving weeks of assignment that took an hour or a week of assignment that took 8 hours. And so there was like so much discrepancy. And so did your state put in any requirement in terms of how long the engagement should be for the student? I'm asking because I did a biweekly family check-in on Sunday with our private group where we just kind of came in for a Q&A, and Randy, who's also a big participant in our group, posted that her length of engagement for a full week is only an hour for her content area, and she was really feeling constrained with that. So did you guys have any of that support in place either in the past or now?
No, at the beginning, I think we were kind of just fluid. We were just floating in water. We really just were trying to stay above water because we really didn't know how to best attack this and how to, and what models would be sustainable and going back. So I don't think that there was anybody thinking that of going that. But in the back of my head, I kind of started after the first week, after the sort of second week, when I started getting all the feedback of like, well, this link isn't working. That site shuts down. And students were starting to have trouble. And one of the first assignments I had kids do was just say, send me a message and tell me, do you have internet? Are you okay? Do you need anything? Just trying to get, and most people did respond, but there was kids that were for probably 2 or 3 weeks that didn't respond to me, period. And now whether their situation at home was different or they just kind of thought, hey, we're out of school for a couple weeks. We don't have to do anything, So, that was but as for the latter part of your question, I think with the new thing that they came out with today or starting today was where they didn't necessarily give us any guidelines. I think they were just looking at saying, the average time that a student is going to learn at home is far less than what it would be in school. They can get up and go to the bathroom. They can get up and go get a snack. They can walk around the house, go play outside. It's sunny and warm outside, and you're trying to tell them to sit in. So I don't remember directly, but I think it was basically somewhere between about a 30 to 45 minute window, probably of what not to exceed an hour is basically over the whole week, I think. So, and I think going back to you saying if the lesson takes more than an hour, you really need to reevaluate what is the most important thing they need to learn.
And I really think that that was the most important thing that you said early on when you kind of went through that whole big picture of this experience, is that teachers are being forced to really look at what's most important in my subject area. And I actually see this quite frequently when I get to facilitate workshops with with the Teach Better team. Typically with the grid method is it forces teachers to look at how they've typically taught something, and we don't throw it out. I mean, you should still use these great tools and resources and learning opportunities that students have benefited from and enjoy, but you have to find ways to weed out the things that maybe didn't align to the standard very well, but you really liked it and you always included it, or things that you assign just to kind of assign something for the day. And you kind of have to get together the essentials. What really does the student need to be able to accomplish to prove mastery on this idea? And I think a lot of teachers are going through what you're going through right now of having to do that evaluation of their content area. And the bummer is that they're doing it alone in their homes versus like a collaborative environment, like a workshop where you can kind of spitball with the people next to you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I thought about this last night. It's scary kind of doing this all alone. I know when we're normally in school, we meet with our team, 2 to 3 times a week, and we're discussing what are we doing next and what are this. And so, not that we're not carrying on meetings via virtually, but it's this weird, situation that we can't quite get a grasp on of trying to figure out what is the best way to attack it. But
so I really want to get into the feedback piece. I want to get back to that and all that. But can I ask you really quick? Yeah. You're talking about using other means to kind of connect with your colleagues and brainstorm. Have you guys put together any system of how you're brainstorming together or keeping connected with the people you work with? Just out of curiosity, more so for me, because I really want to make sure I'm keeping connected with my colleagues.
Every week we meet on I think it's Tuesday. We have a Zoom meeting that we'll get on and just discuss. And our principal joins us kind of just to say, what are we running into? What are some problems? How are some successes? And that's been the biggest thing right off the bat. Cell phones, we all have text messages, and we're keeping back and forth. What were you thinking about for this week, and what were you thinking about for that week? Kind of thing. So that's really how we're doing that. And then that's the easiest way right there to answer that question.
No, I think that's great. I'm currently doing a Zoom call option. It's actually, we're using Google Meets now, I think. But we're using that option once a day at 1:00. So any student and any teacher on our team can pop in. So that's kind of social interaction time. And then our team is doing a team meeting on Wednesday mornings and Friday mornings, kind of to talk around students, but also to just engage with each other. But definitely my text message thread was crazy. I don't know if you caught, you were in our biweekly check-in yesterday afternoon. I had 42 text messages from them, even just by being live in our private group for an hour. So there's plenty of engagement, but it's always good to keep up with your colleagues when you are stuck at home. It's super important.
Yeah, and we also, I do have office hours every day from 9:30 to 11. And we use Schoology as our learning management system, and they do have an option there called conferences, which our district is recommending that we use that because it's the easiest and secure way that students can go in and meet with me if they have any questions on assignments or feedback. But I'm very active in providing, usually, if not daily, every other day videos or just a little small tutorial how to use something. So that's the other way that they can keep track with me.
I think that's awesome. That's perfect. And I think office hours is a great opportunity to not only have students ask questions, but engage with you because they miss you. I'm very confident they do. So, so you told us starting today, you are making a shift in what you were already doing. It sounds like not a drastic shift, but an important shift that's kind of mandated by your state, where you're providing one lesson for the entire week and then enrichment. And I won't lie to you, Joe, this kind of sounds like what I'm doing as well, because in my state, we do have an engagement requirement time frame. I talked about this in a daily drop-in a few weeks ago, where I need to offer something between like a 15 and 30-minute math something every single day. And so what I've done is it's kind of like an hour and a half of math a week, more or less. And I gave them like a mini grid is what I'm calling it, where I do a few learning opportunities that scaffold towards the standard. And then I have a few on-standard learning opportunities. And then I have enrichment. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, where I am, everything's optional. So, when we talk about what's quote unquote assigned, I assign these pieces, but, students can kind of take them for what they need, for what they're worth. So, is that kind of similar to how you've structured your lesson, I'm sure, where you're doing like some sort of practice, something on target, and then this optional enrichment? When you're doing those pieces, how are you giving students feedback? Have you figured out your structure for that work yet?
Well, for the most part, I had to create the assignment, and the feedback portion is going to be a learning part for me. It was, I'm trying to think here, what is the best way to say this? I had to go with this is how I decided to attack it. I looked at, and I hate to say this, and I hope I'm wrong, I looked at it from the stance of, we're probably not going to see these kids for the rest of the year. That was me. I hate to say it, and if I'm wrong, great. Then you know what? Whenever I just don't see a plausible scenario us going back to school being a safe thing. That's just my own personal opinion. Of course, it's different all across the country in different parts of So, but I sat there, and then once they've already done away with the state testing, and we don't have to make up days. So I'm sitting there and going, okay, if I don't see these kids until next year when I walk back into school and they're 7th graders, what can I do from now until at least April 30th or April 30th and beyond to hopefully somewhat prepare them for the next grade level? And I even contacted a couple of the 7th grade teachers. I'm like, okay, what are some things that you're missing? And they gave me some ideas. So I kind of just went back to almost some basic stuff that we needed to work on all year just for them to improve upon. So nothing in my mind that was too taxing. It wasn't new content, and as relative as possible. That's the way I attack the English lesson. And then I teach English and social studies. And social studies, I kind of left the content that we were doing at that time, and I switched it over to an economics, where I was like, this is primary. You're in economics right now. This is economics 101. So, and getting them to do some sort of activity. And the biggest thing that I think our principal and our administrators pushed to us was get them to engage in it. Don't just give them a worksheet. Don't just, do this. Do some sort of webinar or video and get them to engage. And that's what I hope to do is that one of the sentence improvement was the one activity where, here's some very basic sentences, fix them, make them better, make them sound better. And then I said, pick one of them, make a video of it, and send it to me. And that's kind of part of the assignment. And I said, extra, I want to say points, but extra bonus if you can get your family members involved. And then the other one for the economics was, if you're allowed to and can go out to a store, take a picture of what economy might be seeing, stuff like that. So that was how I decided to attack, where as in previous weeks, I kind of had just, here's the content, here's the assignment, it's due on this date. And that was that. So with really no feedback. So I'm also learning that, okay, maybe this week's assignment didn't offer enough opportunities of feedback. So maybe I need to change it for the following week and do something a little bit different to get more feedback.
No, I think that you just hit the nail on the head in terms of two different areas. One is trying to incorporate purposeful and meaningful times of feedback in your lessons. So gold right there. And the other is that you're trying to provide students more experiences to explore their learning rather than just doing their work. And I think a lot of teachers are dabbling with trying to find this balance. I know that's a huge part of something that I'm working on as well, where in my district, we've actually decided there's no new content that you're allowed to introduce. And I've had a few teachers feel like they're handcuffed with that. Like, oh my goodness, how am I supposed to provide opportunities for students to engage them for 15 to 20 minutes a day all week long, but I can't introduce new content? And I really would challenge everyone listening. This is an opportunity to challenge your students to take their background information, really shore up those fundamental skills, and now go explore them in the world, because they have the opportunity in their home, in their backyard, to find your content now in action. And so I think that's super interesting that you've not only given them these opportunities for experiences, but then also folded in these purposeful times for feedback. And feedback really should be driven on enhancing their understanding rather than like task completion, because more often than not, teachers feel comfortable giving feedback on like accomplishing a task, but it's the feedback that's more driven on student understanding that actually gets them to that next level. And these are hard things to incorporate, but they're important.
Yeah, definitely. This whole isolation has made you really start to think and wonder. I want to say as a teacher for only X number of years, but I feel at the end of this year, you're like, oh, well, this summer I'm going to work on this and do it. And we fall into the trap, and maybe some of you are better than I am, but not doing anything. And you come back into school in the fall and, I'm going to change this, no. And it, in my mind, it doesn't, or at least it's for me, it hasn't. So I look at this going, at least this whole event will now make me pause and before I'm planning a lesson or activity or new content, saying, is this what they really need to know? Or is this going to cover, or how am I going to know that they're specifically doing that? Because, and I kind of think of it as, because a lot of kids will always ask me in class, is this good? Is this good? And I kind of stop and go, do you think it's good? And then they're like, well, what? And I look at them and I say, if I tell you it's good, you'll stop and you won't go any further. And I say, I want you to keep going until you feel that you're satisfied with your answer or your piece of work. And it doesn't always work. And again, there's moments where those kids, that it's good to me. I was like, well, okay, I'm just, so, and that's where I need to work on my feedback piece of being better. I have a lot of flaws too. I don't want to sit up here and think that I provide the best feedback. So that's something from now until at least the 30th of April to work on, is challenge myself to provide feedback.
See, Joe, this is why you were the perfect guest to join us for our daily drop-in. Come on. I love this conversation. I love this reflection. I actually have a whole nother stint that I was going to ask you about. But before we get into that, we have like 2 or 3 different comments that I really want to come and address really quick. So we're going to move to the comments. Don't forget, if you are listening to our conversation right now on Teach Better Talk podcast as a bonus episode, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can participate as well. Just come join our group at teachbettergroup.com over on Facebook. It's a private group. If you're an educator, we want you in here. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of teachers that get to participate every morning, and I love these questions. So the first one that caught my eye was from Alex, and he says, have teachers been given guidelines for how long they have to work each day beyond virtual office hours? So Joe, I'm going to ask you specifically, and then I do think I have some sort of insight for Alex, but have you guys been given parameters on kind of like your working day, quote unquote, maybe beyond these office hours that you're offering in the mornings for your students?
I think initially, because we were operating under the assumption that first week that we would be able to maybe be at school and sitting in our rooms and doing stuff that way. But obviously everything had changed, so we still had to set up office hours. And I think it was basically, set it up for what works for you, because most of us are all home and some people have families and lives and kids. And so I just selected, a time that worked for me. But we were basically given, I think, nothing more than 90 minutes. So I think it was one of the other things is when you first heard office hours. I mean, I remember back to college, professor has office hours, you can come visit, from this, that, they would be in the room. And I was kind of wondering, do I need to be sitting at my computer from 9:30 to 11, literally waiting for kids to email? Yeah. I go off the principle of no, because I'm a very open person. I communicate. I try to respond as quickly. Kids message me all the time. Now there was a couple kids that were emailing me at 11:30 at night. I was like, I'm not going to respond to that, at least until the morning. But yeah, that was really the only minutes. Is basically, it was, nothing more than 90 minutes was what I think. It wasn't an official writing, but I think our admin just basically advised us. Really nothing more than that. Don't wait, take up your entire day sitting there waiting for a kid to email you and message you about a lesson or something like that. So,
yeah, it's really tricky. I know a lot of discussions around equity have brought up this conversation around the fact that students may not be working during their typical school hours, right? Jeff Gargis was in here. I don't remember when I had this conversation with him. I don't know if it was a part of a daily drop-in or a Mastery Chat recap or what it was. I feel like I've been live like every day, all day. But him and I were talking about how his daughter and his son are actually benefiting from working during different times because he's at home with 2 kids. He's trying to work full time, very similar to a teacher who's home who has their own children. And sometimes your son may work better in the afternoon and your daughter may work better in the morning. And so kind of offering to be more lackadaisical with the time in which our students are working is really a gift of what we need to provide our students right now with this equity gap. But on the flip side, that's causing teachers to feel like they're needing to work 24 hours all day long because they might get an email at 8 a.m. in the morning and another email at 11 o'clock at night. And what's the expectation for them? So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but the suggestion that my district has provided, which I very much appreciated being able to fall back on when I needed to, was that they wanted us to be available between 8:45 and 1:45, which essentially meant when they said available, that was like a hot topic for a while. When they said available, they literally meant like via email. So I do offer like a virtual time that students can pop in like a Google Meet setting. And that's every single day at 1:15. But to be honest, it's kind of nice that I have some flexibility where if they email me between 8:45 and 1:15, I can get back with them, within a reasonable amount of time. And kind of like a comment here from Andrea, she's saying she tries to respond to emails within 24 hours. And that's really, I think, teachers need to give themselves a little grace on this topic because responding within 24 hours or only responding between certain timeframes may not be ideal, but it's extremely practical and appropriate. So putting those guidelines, I think, are valuable for our own, well-being and sanity too.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, that's definitely the truth. Yeah, I don't want to be sitting there all day long, not wanting to, help a student, but it's just one of those things. We all have lives outside of this, and I've got my 2 boys in the other room, and maybe maybe the students have a different schedule. So maybe mom or dad works, or they're at grandma's house, and their internet doesn't work. There are only certain times that they can do this. So.
Well, and to the point, there was a comment that was just made, when you're running more of a self-paced environment where, for example, if you're a teacher who's assigning things by week, you're essentially assigning a self-paced learning experience for a week. And obviously everybody's done this a little bit differently. If you're a teacher that's using the grid method, you're probably using a triage system or some sort of management to help you with that, which I have found to be a complete lifesaver. But because you're working in that environment, it does allow you the flexibility to not be on your email all the time. Because if they're asking you a question on Monday, but they email you right after your time frame ends when you would typically be on your email or available for students, you can either say, yeah, I have time right now. I'm going to make sure that I engage in the student's question. Or because it's not due for the end of the week, I'll get back to them tomorrow. I'll set up a time. It seems very relaxed in an environment where you can really focus on the learning and not focus on these time constraints that really don't have any meaning right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So Randy also posed a question. She says, we were given specific time for office hours so subjects don't overlap. 2 days I'm on from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. The students are not up. So Randy's kind of vocalizing frustration that she was given a time frame, but it's not really conducive to what her students want or are used to. So what are your thoughts on that, Joe?
I found the same in another piece, and hopefully we can get to it. But before we run out of time, is communication. I teach. We do kind of I teach 2 classes. I have a morning block and an afternoon block. So I really only have 51 of the 220 kids in our school. So I have the luxury of I've called every single one of them at least once and just talked to the parents, whether that or left a message in the phone saying, hey. And half the time when I get a hold of the parents, it was just, they were so nice to hear the voice and just check in. But a lot of them were saying, well, they're asleep, because I was calling about 9:30 in the morning. So, Yeah, I see that too. They're asleep. They're waking up on college hours, if you want to call it that, where they're up late at night, sleep in all morning, get up in the afternoon and do their work. And that's why I'll be out with my boys, and 3 o'clock in the afternoon I'm getting messages. And most of the time, the messages or questions coming are just saying, "Hey, this didn't work. This didn't work," or "I don't understand this. Could you explain it?" And I can usually quickly reply and send it back, and I don't have to worry about that. But I that's just a challenge right now, and maybe she could stress her students of saying, if it's an emergent, try to hold off and or schedule a certain time. Obviously if the assignment's not due till Sunday, say, "Hey, when's the time that works for you that you and I can meet at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and have a quick call and go on from there." That would be my suggestion if somebody didn't put that. So.
Well, and Randy, that would be my suggestion too. I mean, I personally, and I can say this to you because I know that we're friends, but like, I personally don't agree with having a set time so things don't overlap, quote unquote, because I don't think students are operating that way right now. We put in a lot of structure, the beginning of remote learning, teaching students how to build their own schedule based on their own needs and the own requirements from their content area. So that could mean that they work on my subject area 15 minutes every day. Or it could mean that all Monday is just dedicated to math and they don't do anything for the rest of the week. So trying to give students that flexibility, some voice and choice in how they run their day also kind of goes along with, you being available. So I understand why 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. isn't really conducive to when your students are working or available. So if possible, could you offer other options, even though it sounds like your school may be trying to put in some constraints? I just would challenge any administrators or any districts that are going through this process. If you want to put together structure, let's focus our structure in teaching our students how to create their own structures rather than creating our own as a district level from a distance. Because when our students are not in our environment, we really need to give up the control and hand it back over to the students and say, you are in control. How can we help you kind of manage the environment that you're in, rather than us trying to create requirements at a distance and hoping that you catch on and kind of abide by them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, exactly.
So, Alex posted another comment here saying, "I'm wondering about teachers' work time, not student work time. Many teachers worked, say, 7 to 4. Are you expected to be doing professional work the same hours, or are you only being asked to be available for students?" Do you have a thought on that, Joe? I kind of feel like my response to that is my district has asked me to be available for students. And so my planning is also kind of happening during that time when my students don't need me. But I also have a professional learning day on Thursday that was already in our calendar that we get to do some professional learning to get ready for future weeks. So that's kind of where I'm at. What about you?
I think, again, in the very beginning, the day was supposed to be, or the very first was supposed to be, you were, I think the vision I had was, you were kind of to be available, but then I think that they looked at it of, we're salaried people. There's no time clock to punch in that we're up at a certain time, or an email is time stamped, or the video is done by this time and posted, that they're going to come back and say, well, you didn't post it by this time, kind of thing. Nothing really that, I feel like I'm working all day long. That's the thing. And but I'm not putting, I think when we go to school, that's where you're putting in that, compress that by 6 hours or whatever in that one learning spot. Now I'd say drag it out over an entire day, where I may hear from 2 or 3 students at 8:30 in the morning, but I may not hear from another student till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I can still be, quote, available via my phone and technology, or might just be able to not get to it right away and get to that. So that's the easiest. That's the way I can think about that. It's not like we're sitting on the beach, relaxing, hanging out. We none of us really have anywhere to go. So, but I understand his question. It's a very valid point, and I haven't really received any. I just know that I try to get ahead of it and be as vocal and out there as much as I can, so that, heaven forbid they can come back and say, no, look, I posted videos either every other day or updates or whatever I can to get the word out there. So.
Yeah, I love this. I have to comment on Randy's comment. She says, my 4 children and 4 dogs don't care what the schedule is. I'm a mom and a teacher all day long. That is the epitome of where every single educator, whether you're participating live or watching this afterwards, that is where we are all at. So I love it. You know, Joe, we have been live together for 40 minutes. You have provided so much insight. We've been able to dive into so many different ideas, but I know that you had a number of different things that you wanted to share. Did we touch on all of them, or were there any other areas that you feel like were really important to discuss, especially with kind of what you've been experiencing in the past few weeks?
I think the only last thing that I would touch on is just the communication. Is be open about it. Be as, I hate to say, aggressive as possible. I mean, I've called so many parents on the way to work or caught them at work, and it's forcing me to say, hey, is everything going okay? Is there anything you need? Are you not understanding something? Are you having trouble? Do you have access to internet? I'm just calling them, and some of them are right away going, well, did they turn in the assignment? Did they turn assignment? I said, I'm not calling for that. I'm calling for you and your family. And I got a very general, overwhelming response of support and saying thank you. And one parent thanked me for saying the videos allow a connection to a student to maintain a connection to me. So that would be my challenge to you. Of course, not everybody is comfortable recording videos, or you can even do a screencast. If you haven't figured that out, there's tons of webinars on how to do a screencast, or on your computer. Do that, and just hearing your voice is much different than, here's a video or here's an activity and do this. So, and reach out for help. I know our technology team for our county has done a phenomenal job from day one. They have an entire folder of daily webinars of how to use all these things we are so blessed with the technology department in our school, and our admins are really pushing this to help. Any question I have, I almost can either Google it or I can email one of them and say, hey, how can you help me with this, get this working? This isn't working.
That's so awesome. I actually want to talk about that a little bit more, if you don't mind picking that apart a little bit. I really would challenge anybody listening, if you are not comfortable recording videos, get over it. Like, I mean that in like the most loving way possible. And you guys know, guys, I love this group. I love our network. It is so odd. It feels weird, whether you're recording an Instagram story or sitting alone in your office like I am right now on camera talking to Joe. I know it's weird, but get over it. Like, your students need to hear from you. They need you. And it's not ever going to be the same, not only for instruction, but for like the emotional well-being of our students. They love you. You have fought for these relationships that you've built. Don't lose them because you don't feel like being on camera, because your students love you no matter how you look, and they need to hear from you. And so whether you're using, I like, Joe, that you talked about, there's so many tutorials on Screen-O-Matic or anything. If you have a laptop with a camera or a cell phone, record a video. And it can be a 3-second video of you just saying hi and smiling, or it can be an entire lesson of you teaching something. But the whole goal is for them to get some interaction with you. Because as we begin to shift, my hope, fingers crossed, and I might be a few weeks ahead of my time right now, I'm really hoping that as a teacher, you are finding the structure that you need to be able to provide students learning opportunities and be able to give them feedback and track their progress. If you're not yet there with those like 2 or 3 pieces, then please reach out, because our team would love to help you. But after you get that structure in place, and it sounds like, Joe, you have a great structure in place, we really need to shift our instructional focus to not only be on supporting students, but really supporting our families. So whether that be a video to families or, something along those lines, they really, really need to hear from us too, because they are struggling at home, and we have the power to make them feel supported. So I love, Joe, your concept of, my tech department has been there for me. And I think that is something that's so meaningful. I'm hoping that our our educational communities are seeing how important it is to have coaches and have people that are there to support our teachers. And on the flip side, think about your parents. Your parents don't know what the tech coaches are. They don't have their emails. That's not the community your tech coaches serve. You're the coach for your parents. So the more videos you can produce, the more resources you can help parents through, the more contact and phone calls, Joe, that you mentioned that you can make. Our parents need those because you are the tech department. You're the principal for our families who need an adult to ask questions to. So I think that's so important. Well, I just think that's something I hope all teachers really begin to focus on.
Yeah, the last thing I'll talk on that is that I've had, I think we've probably for the past almost 5 or 6 years, we've been a Apple school. So I've had a MacBook, I've had an iPad, and I've been blessed with that. But honestly, now I've learned more about it, of how to actually use it. And I think that was one of my struggles. And I had just met with our tech coach, had come to our school and was talking on how to change some things of, how we're using technology, when we were just like, well, we get them to do a PowerPoint and we put it up there or something like that. And he's like, that's not really engaging the students. So he was going to start working with us to help us, and becoming an Apple Distinguished Educator, or even becoming a Google Certified teacher. Those things are 2 recommendations probably from them, saying, use the technology you have here. And I can tell you the Conferences app in Schoology, the little link, I can go in and record a video, and within after maybe 15, 20 minutes, post it. And that could be used for next year when we have a snow day, or when we have, power outage, something that I look at it going, the kid that missed school for 2 or 3 days, hey, here's my lesson. I recorded it, and now you can watch it. So for me, that's a huge advantage going into next year, looking at going, okay, most of these kids should know how, or should know or be familiar with these things. And I think at the beginning I had a different attitude of when I think I was talking to you guys in the group or something, and I just said, I realized that a lot of these kids are not as tech savvy as we think they are. And so I go, well, okay, well, if they're not tech savvy, maybe the parents aren't even anywhere near that. So I constantly get messages back and forth. So, the challenge is to find the right technology and the right tech tool and use it appropriately. But the other challenge is then show them how to use it. That's the biggest thing. Show them how to use it. I wish Flipgrid's the only one that's kind of fell on my face with. It's just I didn't get enough response back. I'll probably be working on it for moving into the next year when the kids come in and that's the first thing they see, and they can kind of go from there. But that'd be my only, I wish I could get that a little bit more up and running, and I can maybe work on it over the next couple months. But
yeah, it's funny. I'm using Flipgrid to address those common questions. So I'm pointing my students and my parents to a Flipgrid question portal where they literally are supposed to post questions, and then I'm monitoring it. So I'm making sure that I respond, but also like my students might get to it first and they might already have the answer as well. So I actually have had parents post questions saying, hey, the Chromebook won't turn on. And then a student's responding saying, oh, did you hold down the power button? Did you check this setting? And, I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think creating a community of where you can ask questions in a safe space and get those answers is really important. Joe, I know that our daily drop-in is going to end soon. So any questions that you guys want to throw in here before we end, is feel free to do that within the next few minutes. Can I ask you, Joe, do you do like a beginning of the year video for families at all? That's a habit that I've gotten into that I actually did over again when remote learning kind of came into fruition. So do you do that at all for your families?
I had not since probably 2 or 3 years ago. I would, Schoology was not officially our LMS, if I can remember correctly, a couple years ago. So I used, I can't remember the name of it. It's the one where you can write, draw, or you'll probably
Seesaw.
Say again.
No, is it Seesaw? No.
Yeah, Seesaw. That was it. I'm sorry. So when I used Seesaw, and that was where I had the most interaction. So instead of sending a newsletter home, eventually you'll learn is that the newsletter comes home, it most likely ends up on the floor, trash, or doesn't even make it out the door. So I would do a 1 to 2 minute newsletter of every week, and that's what I would update my parents. And I got a really positive response. And I think the next year, I don't know why, if anything, I went away with it. I think we had to. So moving to this, looking forward and going back to that, going, okay, that worked. Maybe starting next year, do more video introductions as in the beginning of the year, and something to challenge myself and challenge other people, challenge other people.
Yeah, I have loved doing kind of a video tutorial that I share with students, but really it's for my parents, like telling them all about me, walking them through my website, explaining the why behind my classroom and like why it's set up structurally to look the way that it does. I kind of go through all these different pieces. It's, usually between a 7-minute video to a 15-minute video sometimes. And I actually like re-recorded a version of it for remote learning because I realized that my parents are feeling stuck and they're feeling like they're guessing. And so I went through kind of like the basics again. Here's the why behind why I structured things. In case you don't remember me, like I'm the math teacher, like I reintroduced myself just to try and re-engage with those families who need to feel like they are supported at home with the array of different challenges they have. So I would challenge, I think your focus on wanting to end our daily drop-in this morning on communication and the importance of communication was so spot on, Joe. So thank you for all your insight and everything you've been able to share on that. It's so valuable.
Thank you, Ray. It's been a pleasure coming on here. I told you I still couldn't sleep last night. I'll probably sleep better tonight, but I'm thrilled to be here. You guys have been fantastic ever since I've connected with you guys since the conference and probably before that. So it's an honor for me to come on and you got everybody on the team. I mean, I don't know how many times I've sent messages, questions, comments, and always feel like, is this a stupid question or whatever? And I get nothing but a positive response of, hey, thanks for reaching out. This is what you can do. So if anybody's not connected, I highly recommend it, or just check them out and see what they're all about. You don't have to sign up right away or anything, but in fact, there is no sign up. It's just basically you just follow us. So one last thing on the video thing, and I'm sorry, it is that anybody that is going to make a video or tutorial or any type of, keep it to that, I'd say 6 minutes or less if you can, to break it up. So if you're going to go through a tour of the class or whatever, break it down into segments, because I'm sure if I'm like anybody, if the video is over a certain amount of time, my mind, I just lose, I think we all lose interest after a certain point.
Totally.
So that's one key recommendation the technology team says that, obviously if you're recording your lesson, maybe break it up into smaller chunks, so that, or tell them this will be 15 minutes, next one will be 10, last one will be that, just so that they know that, okay, it's going to be anyway. But
Joe, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I completely agree. Like, try and keep it within that 3 to 5 minute range. And if that means you have 4 or 5 videos, go for it, especially for a lesson, but be really specific, label them, introduction, going over this term, be very specific. Because then not only are you achieving that attention span that you want to make sure that your students can stay engaged with the content, but also it allows them to refer back to it when they need it. If you break it up, then they really can have that targeted approach in finding the answer versus giving a student or a parent a 20-minute video. You're scrolling through, and at that point you're like, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But
it's so fun. Well, thank you for everyone here that was able to join us for our daily drop-in. Don't forget that these videos are all archived in our private group, which is the only place you can actually participate live with us and share your comments. If you are watching this, you can also catch all of the videos on YouTube and the audio as bonus episodes for Teach Better Talk podcast. Don't forget, we have Mastery Chat every single Thursday that you can participate in at 8 p.m. Eastern. We have 7 podcast episodes publishing every single week that are either a combination of our daily drop-ins or our amazing interviews with teachers across the country sharing their insight and their stories. We have new blogs publishing every single day at teachbetter.com. We have about 4 blogs that you can catch every week to stay up to date on the new things going on with remote learning, social distancing, and anything in between for the classroom. And last but not least, we have so many downloads that have been created for teachers and administrators over on our website. We actually have that under the free downloads tab and actually under the distance learning portal that we created, where we kind of took all the courses and the blogs and the YouTube playlists, put them all in one location for you. So if you are somebody looking for resources and tools or wanting to take a free course on how to facilitate a virtual learning classroom, please head over to teachbetter.com. We got a lot there. But Joe, we really appreciate you joining us for our daily drop-in. You had so much insight to share. You definitely didn't have any reason to be nervous. We really appreciate it. So thanks for everybody that participated, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.